Hello and welcome to Azril. Today we'll be covering the Shadow Priests. Now Shadow Priests have gone through a few changes here and there. The biggest change is the resource bar. You now have something called Insanity. As you can see, you start with 0 and you build it up to 100. Your Shadow Orbs are gone. You still retain your basic toolkit and DPS, which is Mind Blast, Shadow Word Pain, Mind Flay, Vampiric Touch, and Shadow Word Death. Same said for your utility spells. Now, if you took a quick glimpse of my mouse action there, you will notice how do I spend my Insanity. Well, once you get your Insanity to 100, you can then use Void Form. I know the tooltip there says 60, but that's because of one of my talents I've chosen at the moment. Once you're at 100 Insanity, you can then activate Void Form. It has no cooldown, only a requirement of 100 Insanity. So if I blast, I will generate 15 Insanity. If I put my Pain, I put my Touch, I can even Shadow Word Death this target. It's all generating Insanity. Now do note, my Shadow Word Death is only generating Insanity because, again, one of the talents I have chosen. Usually your target would have to die to have it generate Insanity. Now I activate my Void Form and my Void Insanity is just like dropping. So it's all about prolonging, keeping it up, using Void Form only abilities like Doom Bolt, whatnot. It's all about, see, I'm like fighting my bar, and by doing so, what's happened is I've generated these stacks, and these stacks per second increase my haste by 1%. I also increase my damage through Void Form by 30%, and it also reduces the cooldown of Mind Blast. But the longer you are in Void Form, the faster it will drain. But at the same time, the longer you are in Void Form, the more stacks of haste you will obtain. So for that duration, that little play around, I generated 21% haste. Just like that. Which then means the next time I go into Void Form, it will be faster and faster and faster. So you're building up momentum. It's all about sustaining this momentum and constantly building and keeping Void Form as long as you can. But at the same time, it's not all about mindlessly going into Void Form. Void Form could also be used as a cooldown. You're doing a boss mechanic. You're spawning an ad. This ad needs to die really quick. But you popping your Void Form 10 seconds before, you wasted all of your prolonging, and then the ad has spawned. What do? You're not going to generate on that ad to kill it fast. So at the same time, it's not about being mindlessly tunnel vision and wasting your Insanity. Manage your cooldowns, manage your Void Form. Now let's get into the talents. This is what I've gone with, and I'll give you my reasons why, and also go over why I didn't take the other talents. Twist of Fate. Now, Twist of Fate is really damn good for Shadow Priests. They're one of the only few specs / class that has an execute. It's really only warriors and Shadow Priests that have execute. There are some gimmicks out there like the Feral Ferocious Bite under the threshold, and I guess you could say the Doom Guard for Warlocks, but that's pretty much it. There's not really anything else. So let's continue. The Shadow Word Death is amazing. It really is. And this talent here has synergy with another talent, Reaper of Souls, which allows you to use Shadow Word Death at 35% and give you that Insanity you would get if the target was killed without it dying. So it's already such synergy right there. It's just like, it's kind of slapping you in the face. Twist of Fate is a very good way to go. But at the same time, in some fights, you might not actually get that target to 35%. And I believe if you're progressing a fight, you don't really want to go with Twist of Fate. You want to use something that's going to help you get there. But this is just for an overall, you know, spec. This isn't just like specifically aimed at one thing. Overall, I think this is the way to go. Twist of Fate, definitely good. Now, Fortress of the Mind. It looks really good on the tooltip. Like, you're thinking, what are you doing? Why didn't you take Fortress of the Mind? But the problem is, you hardly Mind Flare, you hardly Mind Blast enough for it to deal that much damage. It is such a small percentage of your damage, Mind Blast. Same for Mind Flare. And it doesn't matter that they generate more insanity, because you're not using them as often. The increase isn't really what makes this talent interesting. It's more of the insanity generation. So that's why you don't go Fortress of the Mind until some kind of tuning pass comes over, where Mind Blast suddenly is the bee's knees and it's more prominent to take this talent. But at the moment, it's a very lackluster talent. Shadow Word Void, perfect alternative for Twist of Fate. If you're progressing a fight, obviously you're not going to get to 35% straight away. This is the greatest talent to use. It's another way to generate insanity. It does nice, decent amount of damage. But unfortunately, it is a 30-second cooldown, and it has one drawback. It doesn't scale with haste. But you do get 3 charges of it. So you could essentially use this to manage your Void Form usage better. So you could build up 3 stacks, then go into Void Form and have something else to depend on to prolong your Void Form. Next row. I've gone with Mania. It doesn't really matter what you go for this row, but I like movement speed for 5 insanity. That's 20% movement speed. If I was at 100 insanity, that's 10% movement speed. If I was at half my insanity, it's 5% movement speed all the time. You can go for more movement speed on burst, like Body and Soul. So if I Power or Shield, you know, I'm running around. But that's a global. Obviously, Power Word Shield is a defensive for Shadow Priest. Other than Dispersion, you don't really have anything else. This is more of your go-to thing for Shadow if you want to live in some fights. Shield yourself. There you go. You could also use that shield to move away. So it's more of a preference. I like Mania. It's easy, it's passive, it's always there. The extra movement speed is nice. I don't have to think about it, I just need to do. Magicism. It's kind of a gimmick, to be fair. This Shadow Man. Sorry, where did I put my Shadow Man? Do I even have it on my bars? I do apologize for this. Ah, here we go. Shadow Man. Shadow Man, it deals damage to you after you've healed until they have taken X amount of damage. As you can see, I heal for 127k. I will then take 6.3k every second until I have taken 63k 0.6 damage from all sources or leave combat. It's not very nice ability. It's nice and it's an emergency, and all Magicism does is stop the penalty from being so harsh, I guess. So I don't really like Magicism. You can use this. It's again a preference row. Let's move on. Now this row is kind of cool. Mind Bomb turns your Psychic Swing into a stun, which is quite good actually. It's a 30-second, 4-second stun. There are not that many specs that have AoE stun like that. Yeah, you got Warlocks and Monks and Warriors, but that's pretty much it. You could argue, yeah, Shamans have their totem, but Shamans don't have an instant cast. Yeah, yours is a cast, but even still, it's 30 yards. 30 yards from an impact of 8 yards. I'll show you quickly how you use this. So you target this, bam, so 8 yards around him, stunned. And that's it. Psychic Voice, just cooldown reduction, Dominate Minds, This might have some raid usage, even some dungeon usage. So basically, you will turn that NPC you mind controlled into an actual pet. You'll be able to use its abilities. It will essentially become enslaved demon for the Shadow Priest instead. So Dominate Mind is really damn cool. Has a lot of potential in the future. Moving on, 60 row. Void Lord. Void Lord is a perfect talent choice if you're not going for that execute range, and it's also really good if you want to prolong void forms, because your lingering sanity is gonna last for 8 seconds after you enter the void form. So you'll have that giant haystack for 8 seconds, which is very damn nice. It starts getting that acceleration going a lot quicker. But obviously I went with Reaper of Souls, very reasonable. I went for Twist of Fate. And then you had Void Ray. Now Void Ray again is the same issue as Fortress of the Mind. Mind Flay doesn't really fit the spec right now. Yes, Mind Flay is a very key ability to the Shadow Priest theme, but it's not really used as often. I could literally stand here for 10 minutes and whack a target dummy, and you'll realize, wow, you really aren't using that much Mind Flay. So I've got Scarder here, or Recount, whatever you want to call it, which I will show you the breakdowns as we do a demonstration, and I can tell you that the Mind Flay is just not there, guys. Mind Flay really needs some fixing up. 75 row. Sand Lion. Now Sand Lion has huge survivability baked into this. It's not just survivability, it's nice. Vampiric Touch does a ton of damage, so this could also be good for multi-dotting. But I've gone with, by the way, the survivability doesn't come from the Vampiric Embrace at all. It comes from an artifact trait from Vampiric Touch. The damage a Vampiric Touch does gets turned into a shield. That's what makes it good. Auspicious Spirits. It's nice. It's not only 3 damage, it's a nice way of generating insanity, and more insanity generation passively. Can't say no to that. So I went with Auspicious Spirits. Shadowy Insight. Now this is more of a cleave-esque kind of thing, and at the same time, same can be said for Sand Lion. So this is more of a maths row. It's very hard to say which really is the best talent in this row, but I kind of went with Auspicious Spirits because it is what it is. It doesn't have anything to math about it. They deal more damage, they generate insanity. The only thing you're really going to math is how much insanity are you generating over time. So later on, once people have played with it more effectively, optimized the spec, right gear choices, right stat optimizations, it could really be any of these 3. But Shadowy Insight looks more to me like a cleave thing, you know, having multiple Shadow Web Pains, having more resets on Mind Blasts, etc, etc. So I've gone with, once again, Auspicious Spirits. 90 row. Why didn't I take Power Infusion? It looks really good. You want haste on you, it's great, right? No, because you're going to have so much haste through prolonging your void form. Having a cooldown that gives you 25% haste for 20 seconds, yeah, it sounds nice on pen and paper, and it also gives you more insanity generation, but activation haste is very bad for a priest. You don't really want to have more, you don't really want to have any cooldowns, to be fair, going in. And at the same time, it's not the only cooldown on this row that generates insanity. Mindbender, however, does. So 1 minute cooldown, once again 20 seconds, and it generates 5 insanity every time the Mindbender attacks. And the Mindbender also scales with your haste. So it too benefits from void form. So I feel like there's more synergy going in with Mindbender than Power Infusion. If Power Infusion was a damage amp instead of haste, I could see this being more interesting. But it's not. Mindbender, however, does a ton of damage as well. Shadow Crash. Shadow Crash is it's an AoE skill. Has some problems with Shadow Crash. And the problem is the animation, the travel time. It takes such a long time to reach that target. If the tank moves, or the mobs move, or they get knocked away, or they even die, you're not really going to get the use out of Shadow Crash. So this is more of a, you got kind of like look at the mobs, see what's going on. It's not something you can just throw out there just for some damage. Obviously it is designed to be used that way, but if you're running dungeons, don't expect mobs to last 20 seconds. Mobs usually die in 5-10 seconds tops. And you have to throw that Shadow Crash really early. But the pack is lasting a bit longer than 10-20 seconds. You'll most likely not even land that second Shadow Crash. So then you're wondering, whoa, what's the point? I might as well just stick with Mindbender and leave the face roll AoE to the Blade Storm, to the I-Beam, etc, etc. So this can be tuned up and maybe make the projectile a bit faster, or I don't know, reduce the cooldown at least. Even if the mobs do die, at least you can get it off more often. Or let's go with haste even. Legacy of the Void. Now this is why my Void form could be used at 60. This allows you to go into Void form more often. And at the same time, that sounds bad, it sounds good. This is more of a skill cap kind of thing. And what I mean by that is, you know, somewhere that you're comfortable, you know, you're planning ahead. You can manage your cooldowns, you can manage, like cooldowns I mean Shadow Word Void, you can manage your procs. Activating at 60 is great. You can go in sooner and get the job done just as much as you would if you went in at 100. Whereas using at 100, you have more of a buffer to use, so even on certain fights, Legacy of the Void might not even be that great. You might want to just get in when you have the most going for you. So this is a swing and miss, so it could go either way. Obviously I like Legacy of the Void, so I've gone with Legacy of the Void. Reason being, Mind Spike, this just replaces Mind Flay. And even when Mind Spike is replacing Mind Flay, you still hardly use it. And I don't think I've ever seen 10 stacks. I think maybe 4-5 stacks I've gotten for the Mind Spike. And that's being generous. I don't know, I must have been like messing around for me to get that much, but Mind Spike is very, very bad. This needs fixing, this needs some tuning. And then we have the grand contestant, Surrender to Madness. 10-minute cooldown, all your incendiary generating abilities generate 200% more, and you can cast while moving. But if you finish your Void form, you die. You straight up die. Now I could have taken this talent just to show you guys, which I will do at the end, because I will die. This is a very, very planist kind of thing. You don't really want to just use this wherever. Don't be running in dungeons and you kill the trash bag and you're like, guys, I'm gonna surrender to madness, and then you're down and the cooldown's there for 10 minutes. This is like a trump card. This should be something you should be planning to use for 1, an emergency situation, or 2, a priority, like some kind of point in the fight where you want to use this. You know you're going to be able to use it and get away with using it. Don't throw your life away. Don't surrender to madness. So that's why I went with Legacy of the Void. It's kind of a no-brainer on these two choices. But Surrender to Madness is definitely the go-to talent. I know I've gone with Legacy of the Void, but if you're someone who raids, I'm pretty sure you will always use Surrender to Madness. So let's get into the artifacts. Just like everyone else, you start off with your 3-point Void Torrent. 1 minute cooldown, does a hell of a lot of damage, and it also stops your insanity from draining while you're casting. That's great. So let's say I'm at 20 insanity, my Mind Blast is on cooldown, Void Bolt's on cooldown, Shadow of Death's on cooldown. How am I going to prolong my insanity? It's about to run off. I'm about to lose my form. Bam. You Void Torrent. You channel it. Those cooldowns are back. The moment that channel is on, you be spamming the hell out of that Shadow of Death. Then bam into that Void Bolt. And then bam into that Mind Blast. Your Void Bolt will be back up again. So will your Death. So it's just like ping ponging here. Your insanity's going down. You're ping-ponging it back up, down, up, and the Void Torrent, it sustains, it prolongs, it pauses, but at the same time, you're still building the benefit in the background. So this is, synergy is there. This is something you should really master using. At the start, you'll probably use it to extend your Void form. Towards later on in the fight, you'll be using it to prolong your Void form. And yes, those are exactly the same things, but how you use it will be different. One will be used at the start, one will be used at the end. Why at the start? Because you're building stacks. You want those stacks to stay, so you can go back into Void form faster. So this is a master requirement. You need to learn how to use this. This is your go-to skill cap. Once you've broken this wall, it's then moving on to continually doing that. Void Siphon. Mind Flare damage 20%. Well, to be honest, I would prefer something else, but it is what it is. Unleash the Shadows. Critical Strike, so crit is a nice stat for Vampiric Touch now. Nice synergy with crit. Shadow with Pain, flat damage. Tremble in Fear. It's more of a utility thing. It's not something you'll really use. Sphere of Insanity. Now, this is cool in sense that every target that has Shadow Word Pain, your Void Bolts, your Mind Blast, and your Mind Flays, but only when you're in Void form, will deal 5% of their damage. This even works single target. Now that sounds insane, and it is pretty good. So you gotta think of it in a cleaving sense. This has a lot of potential, and it's something you should really manage. Learn to keep dots up on your off targets, and you can even use this talent to emphasize damage into one target. So Sphere of Insanity is a very good golden dragon. I think it's one of the best I've seen. Let's continue from here. Thrive in the Shadows. Dispersion heals you for 50%. It has its use. It might sound lame, but it has its use. From the Shadows, cooldown reduction dispersion. Hey, why not? 1.5 minutes instead. Mind Shattering, Mind Blast damage. Again, you're not really interested in Mind Blast damage. It's nice to have, it's free, but most of your damage doesn't come from Mind Blast. Mass Hysteria. Now, this is the best golden dragon for Shadow Priest, hands down. Every second, your Void form will increase the damage dealt by your Pain and Vampiric Touch by 2%. These are your two biggest contributors to your damage. Pain and Vampiric Touch, and this has a lot of synergy with a certain other trait here in this tree because of the Vampiric Touch damage amp. So for every second you're in, you're gaining this damage amp. This will be with that haste. So if you have 100 haystacks, you will have 100 stacks of mass hysteria, etc, etc. Let's move on. Shadow Word death damage, nice. Increase the damage done by Void Bolt, nice. You do Void Bolt quite a bit. Void Corruption, damage done by Mind Sear, 3 AoE damage. AoE damage is quite low on Shadow Priest, by the way. So even with emphasized Mind Sears, even when you go into like 20 targets, Mind Sear isn't exactly that powerful. It doesn't deal that much damage. So they could really buff Mind Sear, or even Shadow Crash. Either way, Mind Sear and Shadow Crash don't do that much AoE damage. Mental Fortitude, healing from Vampiric Touch when you are at maximum health will shield you for the same amount. Cannot exceed 126,000 damage assault. This trait is amazing. You can, if your healers are, obviously damage intensive fights no, but if your healers have somewhat topped you in a fight and you've healed yourself, overhealed more to say, you're building a shield, and that is really strong. There are a lot of cases where Shadow Priests in my guild have negated such a chunk out of a mechanic because they just shielded it. And that's not even with powered shield, this is just from their damage. This is such a great talent. Very good defensive trait. Thoughts of Insanity. Shadowward Men now heals 15% more, and you take less damage from the backlash. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of this one, but it's free. Can't argue with it. Touch of Darkness, more Vampiric Touch damage. Like I said, synergies there. Call to the Void. Mind Flay has a chance to spawn a Void Tentacle at Mind Flays again at your target for 10 seconds. It does nice damage, the tentacle, don't get me wrong, but we're then going back to how often do you Mind Flay? Not that often. So we've gone over all the talents and choices and whatnot. How does it play out? Well, let's start. You're obviously going to open up with your Mind Blast. You're going to open up Vampiric Touch, Pain, and you're going to Mind Flay. Now this is if the target was not Shadow Word Deathable, but it is. Now your number one goal is to go into Void form as soon as possible with the 60, but the problem is I don't have the right optimized stats. So when that Void form lit up, I should have been able to go in straight away, Void Bolt, proc my Void Bolt's effect to refresh my dots. And right now I'm just fighting with my Insanity. I've used my Void Torrent to prolong, got my things up, and now I'm just fighting. And I might have gotten some Void Mind Flay damage going off, but it's getting to that point where I just don't have enough haste. I'm lacking, but I built 29 stacks doing so. Now there were a few more things I could have done. Could have started with the fight with Mindbender, and most likely you will, because if you got your pop going in the background, you want to get that Insanity going straight away. So once you do get to 60, you're going to want to Mindbender, you're going to want to pop that Void Bolt instantly, refresh those dots, and do exactly what I just did. And that Mindbender is going to help you sustain that Void form. You would have got more than 29 stacks. 29 stacks is nothing. You'll get a lot more than that. And then you'll just be faster and faster and faster, and yeah, eventually you'll lose your Void form. But then you'll have those stacks to go back into Void form a lot quicker. So this is Shadow Priest. And like I said, Mind Blast, 10% of your damage. Void Bolt, Touch, Torrent. That's really where it is. And the longer the fight, the more use you'll get out of Shadow Word Death, by the way. So I would see Shadow Word Death overtaking Mind Blast easily. Pain, it's there, but like I said, the longer the fight, the more value you'll get into Pain because you're sustaining your Void form, and the Void form there's no Golden Dragon that synergizes with Blast, so Blast is going to go further and further down. So you'll notice Mind Flay and Mind Blast are at the bottom of your tree, to be fair, and everything else is going to get pushed up the further you go into a fight in execute range. So once again, this is Shadow Priest. If you have any questions, please do say in the comment section below. Any feedback, please also do say. If you have any requests, I am open for. And just before we go, let's surrender to madness. Okay. So let me get this going. Oh, I played this really bad. Really bad. Alright, I'm now into Surrender to Madness. I'm just prolonging my stuff. I'm not playing this very good. I should have even did my Void Torrent. I should have just yeah, cast while moving, not OP. For some reason the dummy has regained health and I'm unable to Shadow Word Death it. Oh boy, I'm so gonna die. Okay, wait, I'm struggling. No, no! Surrender to Madness, guys.